Monthly Roundup number 40, March 2026, by Z.V. Mauschowitz, March 16, 2026. It is that time again. After events surrounding Anthropic and the Department of War, I plan on taking full advantage of whatever lulls I can get. Things are only going to move faster over time. That means a higher bar for coverage, and it means potentially skipping more days, or using those days for short posts that either spin off fun little things or that embody concepts I want to refer back to over time. In the meantime, here's everything that doesn't go anywhere else and that does not want to fully stand on its own. Sauce for the goose, there are some basic principles. Don't shoot the messenger. Honor guest right and flags of truce. Don't torture people. Families are off limits. No double taps. No political violence or assassinations. None. If we continue to pursue the decapitation theory of warfare or the kingpin strategy, then I do not believe that goes in good places. So far, this hasn't been flipped around against the leadership of democracy so much. But how long will that last? I do not want to live in a world where the governing principle is power comes from threatening leaders with death unless they do what you say, where power goes to those who can threaten and blackmail and destroy, nor should potential targets. This is an especially bad time to be introducing this norm when killer AI drones are very likely about to become much more of a deal. We've been lucky there so far. Age verification has severe issues. The basic issue is that this makes everyone's experience worse, is a huge, unconstitutional invasion of privacy, drives everyone, especially children, towards VPNs and exactly the wrong websites, and teaches everyone to ignore the law. The other issue is that no one knows how to reasonably implement them. Age verification systems don't work against anyone who wants to get around them, and also constantly leak personal information. Persona's CEO is unusually good in admitting that bypassing it is easy. Did you know that if you can query an iPhone or Android to know if the user is 18, then an app can query every day and figure out your birthday when you turn 18? Those laws are also sometimes written so badly they end up banning calculators.
George grab and flee. You think kids should be able to just see 800-85?
Bad news. China, and in particular Shenzhen, is crushing manufacturing through rapid iteration and ecosystem density. I agree with the diagnosis here that work harder is not the problem that requires solving for everyone else at all. Kelsey Piper explains some additional reasons not to steal. Pretty Little Liars, a book published in 2006, retroactively edited to include TikTok, when they edit books to remove now verboten words or concepts I hate but at least I understand why. To do it to update the cultural references is less dangerous, but also is a whole higher level of abomination. A pattern language.
Nat Sour. Every time I throw a large house party, I am surprised by where people end up congregating. It's never where I plan for them to congregate.
System layers. A few years ago, UCLA did a study on room usage. I often think about how useless a porch/dining room is. Why hasn't there been more innovation around how people actually use their space in their homes?
David Roberts. I think the message about the uselessness of formal dining rooms has finally gotten through. I never see them anymore.
Image. The image shows a home floor plan labeled with rooms like porch, living room, dining room, kitchen, and family room. Red dots are overlaid across the plan, clustering heavily in areas such as the kitchen and family room to indicate where people spend the most time.
The way people use space follows from design and actual patterns of life experience. If you notice people using the space wrong, then that's on you. And you can either accept that and lean into it, or you can redesign to get the patterns you want. Often subtle changes can radically improve interactions or shift them where you want them. Good advice. At some point, I hope to do some good advice posting in my own capacity. Dan Frank offers his top 50 pieces of advice. It's always good to see people's lists, even if you disagree with a lot of their choices, while remembering to reverse any advice you hear, including from me. But remember, when it's from me, it's never investment, legal, medical, or otherwise prohibited advice. The key is the advice has to be interesting and non-trivial. It has to either teach a new thing or argue for a perspective or approach. Dan Frank does well here. I especially appreciate when, as holds here, the points form a particular perspective and embody it well. In this case, it's that staying positive, looking for the upside, finding a good fit, putting in the effort and actually doing the thing are the keys to success. In this case, here is how I feel about all these points, many of which are plus or minus one level if you ask me again another day, especially when I agree with the principle but not the chosen example, or there are two claims and I buy one but not the other. Strongly agree, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 12, number 15, number 17, number 18, number 25, number 33, number 38, number 40, number 42, number 43, number 45, number 48, number 50. Directionally or conditionally agree. Number 1, number 2, number 10, number 14, number 16, number 21, number 28, number 29, number 30, number 32, number 36, number 39, number 41, number 44, number 47, number 49. Moo, it's complicated. Number 3, number 8, number 11, number 24, number 26, number 34. Directionally or conditionally disagree. Number 19, number 20, number 22, number 31, number 35, number 37. Strongly disagree. Number 9, number 13, number 23, number 27, number 46. Overall grade, adjusting for difficulty. A minus or 9 out of 10. I could easily write a post several times longer than Dan's, explaining why I gave these answers, or in many cases explaining only one answer. There's then a sequel post with more things. It felt conceptually repetitive in spots, but it's a strong list with some excellent reminders. Strongly agree, number 2, number 5, number 9, number 12, number 14, number 16, number 18, number 20, number 21, number 26, number 27, number 29, number 33, number 34, number 36, number 37, number 40, number 46. Directionally or conditionally agree, number 3, number 4, number 7, number 11, number 15, number 17, number 24, number 25, number 30, number 35, number 41, number 44, number 45, number 47, number 50B, number 50C, number 50E. Moo, it's complicated. Number 8, number 10, number 22, number 49, number 50D. Directionally or conditionally disagree. Number 1, number 19, number 31, number 38, number 39, number 43. Strongly disagree. Number 6, number 13, number 23, number 28, number 32, number 42, number 48, number 50A. Overall grade adjusting for difficulty. Frank also suggests tasting day, as in things like buying 5 babkas or brands of ice cream, as social events. It's fun, it's cheap, it's informative, it's got a hook. I agree, this seems great. Food crawls are also excellent ideas. Brian Armstrong suggests if you're not sure what to do, just do anything, even the wrong thing, and that gives you information. I give this one a, it's complicated, since this can be anything from a great idea to a very bad idea, to a justification for anything. Nate Silver misses the key difference.
Nate Silver. You can just do things is basically the same heuristic as everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, except for people who haven't been punched in the face yet.
The key difference is that you are not inviting Mike Tyson to punch you in the face. The reason you can just do things is good advice is that for remarkably many things, no one stops you or even objects, and only rarely do they even metaphorically punch you in the face, and when they do, most of the time, it's mostly fine. While I cannot condone this makes sense. Weddings pay a lot extra for venues because it's the most important day of your lives and you need everything perfect, so you're probably going to be extra demanding and likely to break things. Similarly, you're often not going to compromise on many other things that cost a lot, so you pay a lot. Televisions have gotten radically cheaper. Why aren't many other physical goods getting similarly cheaper? One argument is that this is because televisions no longer signal status and basically can't get better, so all the focus is on getting cheaper at scale. I'd say becoming smart TVs did make them radically better, but that part is cheap and has basically zero marginal cost. It suggested that mass-produced generic goods like IKEA bookshelves also get cheaper, but sofas change every 2 years and the bikes keep adding features so they don't get the same discounts. The obvious question is, why change the sofas and bikes? The old sofas and bikes were fine. Yes, you might want new hotness, but given the option to get TV-level cheap copies of older goods, people would accept static quality. Some would want to signal status, but I think a lot of us would do that elsewhere, using money saved. Then there are products like mattresses where the companies don't want you to know which ones are good, or offering good value, or to compare notes with others. They'd rather try to get you to rely on a salesperson, so they intentionally rotate everything. No wonder things don't get better. I don't know who the best philosopher ever is, but I know it isn't Colin McGinn because he claims that it is him. Well, actually, we do know it's Amanda Askell. Is it a good argument that immigration aren't ruining a particular city if housing prices are going up? One can see where that is coming from, but immigration brings in new demand for housing, and supply for housing in particular is often close to fixed due to NIMBY restrictions. So it seems very possible for the city to get otherwise worse, but for housing prices to go up, which is also worse. Tyler Cowen says, NIMBY factors will not reverse the basic conclusions, but I don't see how you can assume that. Elon Musk brags he is the largest individual taxpayer in history, having paid over $10 billion in taxes in 2021 when he exercised all his Tesla options, and that he thought the IRS might send him a little trophy. As D.T. Davis replies, his current net worth is $844 billion, so he has been taxed a very small percentage of his net accumulated assets. Even if you add in his lower tax bills for other years, it must be nice paying such a low tax rate. I'd still be happy to send him the trophy, maybe 2 trophies, one for taxes paid and one for taxes dodged. Continuous wealth taxes are ruinous, but a one-time lifetime minimum tax rate seems reasonable, if you can attach them as debt to illiquid assets and it never resets. How should we model various forms of letting people access small amounts of cash in emergencies for people always short on cash? As Patrick McKenzie notes, it can suddenly get very expensive to be short on cash. The problem is that a cheap source of such cash won't be held back for emergencies and gets used up and isn't there when you need it. So you want your ability to ask for $20 or $50 to come with real friction attached, without being too expensive. High-resolution spot labor markets, as in DoorDash driving, can actually serve this niche quite well. We say we want healthy choices at places like McDonald's, but almost never use them when offered, because if we wanted to eat healthy, we wouldn't be at McDonald's. You go to McD's for the joy and comfort and to get a great deal on calories per dollar. I do think there is social value in including healthy options, but that's primarily, I have to go here with others, so I guess I can get this, which by its nature will not sell well. Locking in, working hard, hardly working, or completely locked in?
Helmet girl. I don't have an OF because I'm not on the grind set like that. All my friends with OFs have a work ethic I literally cannot fathom.
Ayala, the difference in a someone's forcing you to do X work ethic and a you're your own boss work ethic is a gaping chasm.
West Coast Kenny. Yeah, it was a huge adjustment when I started Ubering.
Rather than 2 core levels, I think it's better to think about 3. 1, hardly working. No returns to productivity. Your true task is to appear to work, to not get fired, to please your boss or coworkers, to play politics. 2, working hard. Linear returns to productivity. An honest day's pay for an honest day's work. You're trying to actually accomplish the task or cut the enemy, but you don't need to outright maximize. 3, completely locked in. Increasing returns to productivity. OnlyFans is a central case here, so are most startup founders and many startup workers as well, competitors and athletes and so on. Uber only moves you from Category 1 to Category 2. That's a big adjustment, but it doesn't do the cannot fathom level of work ethic. There is a huge chasm between number 1 and number 2, and also between number 2 and number 3. Subscription price dynamics are weird. The actual surplus comes from the AIs producing outputs worth orders of magnitude above marginal cost. The rest is market dynamics. Consider how much the median ChatGPT $20 per month subscriber would pay in API costs for their queries. It's basically nothing. The $200 per month level is also printing money on most subscribers, except there is a long tail that are maximizing usage where I presume the companies take a loss.
Rune, it is absolutely insane that my combined Substack subscriptions easily rival my pro-tier chatbot subscriptions. The pricing norms that were set by ChatGPT were one of the greatest handouts of consumer surplus in history.
Pliny the Liberator. Lest we forget, the greatest handout in consumer surplus history was AI labs paying $0 for everyone's data. The models are only as good as the human creativity they were scraped from.
Getting the info for free was a giveaway, but Pliny of all people should know that the models are not only as good as the human creativity they were scraped from. Rune is pointing to a very real problem with minor subscriptions, which is that they add up fast. If you're paying $10 per month for each individual newsletter, newspaper, or podcast, or Patreon, or streaming service, including ones you only occasionally utilize, that can add up fast, even if you never forget to cancel. You either pay a ton or you accept you're often locked out. It would be much better if you could do a global subscription, and then they divided distribution according to your actual consumption. I'm generally a big bundling fan, especially as it removes feel-bads and cognitive load. Alternatively, a pay-as-you-go microtransaction system would be great too. And seriously, we have Claude Code, someone go build this properly. The exception would be those creators that you want to support for the sake of supporting them. That's different. When I'm not trying to actively support someone and it's only about access, I have a very high bar for subscriptions and a much lower bar for one-time costs. A lot of this is that if you're behind a paywall that can't be evaded easily, you're importantly not part of the discourse except insofar as you are quoted, and also there's infinite other content. Good news, everyone. Be like Magnus Carlsen and Richard Feynman, and always be fun maxing. Follow your curiosity and the love of the game, and the rest will follow. Obviously, it is not that simple. You still have to do all the other things too. But slack and having fun are vital parts of any worthwhile creative enterprise. From last year via Caleb Watney, NSF is launching tech labs and will be investing $1 billion into $10 million to $50 million per team per year for 5-year commitments, allowing labs to engage in longer-term riskier plays or invest in public goods like data sets, tooling, or scientific platforms, and not spend all their time fundraising and finding small, surefire ways to show enough success to keep the money flowing. This is excellent. Stuart Buck also explains why it makes sense. I expect it to mostly be overtaken by events in AI, but it is very much worth doing. Tyler Cowen suggests this is an excellent podcast with fresh material. I approve of the proposal of Ma'am, this is a map store as a positive valence. This is an even more relevant place for you than you know yet. You are among friends' signal. In contrast to classic Sir, this is a Wendy's. Remember that life really is getting better in dramatic ways, including food costs.
Human progress. 75 years ago, 1 out of every $5 a U.S. family earned went to food. Today, that's closer to 1 in 10. A slow, steady, easy-to-miss kind of progress.
Kelsey Piper. We have been heavily emphasizing history at the kids' school, and I've noticed it change their whole outlook on life as they get a sense of how awful the world used to be and how incredibly lucky we now are. The other day, my daughter was hand-washing a pot so she could make herself oatmeal, and she said aloud, "Dishwashers are an incredible invention." She's right, and I'm so glad that she could notice that and have that lens on the limited manual work we still have to do.
Image. The image is a line chart titled U.S. Household Food Expenditure, showing the share of disposable personal income spent on food from 1950 to 2024. It shows total food spending declining from around 20% to about 10 to 11%, with spending on food at home dropping steeply while spending on food away from home rises gradually to roughly 5–6%. Image. The image is a line graph titled Time Cost of Weekly Household Food Inventory, USA 1901–2024, showing a steep decline in hours of labor required over time. It drops from about 40 hours in 1901 to roughly 3.7 hours by 2024, with a generally downward trend and minor fluctuations mid-century.
On the specific example, we're not only spending a lot less on food, including less time, we're getting a lot more for our time and money. Food is dramatically better, variety is way better, and we're often getting it prepared by professionals and then often driven right to our home. Those who think food is getting worse or more expensive are wrong about this and focused on local, isolated changes. For your entertainment, Paramount bids too high and wins the war for Warner Brothers. My Netflix stock thanks you, sir. It would have been cool for Netflix to get the Warner and HBO catalogs, but this works as well. What do you do when you get your kids Spotify so they can listen to music, and then Spotify betrays you and adds looping short-form videos? Andrew Reddick suggests only putting Spotify on a Google Home, which rules out videos. You could also use an alternative service such as Amazon Music or Pandora. Tauki points out it can be disabled. We used to have this great thing we called Star Trek. Now we don't, because its shell is run by Alex Kurtzman, who thinks he's here to do deeply lazy social commentary and sci-fi action sequences, and maybe some paint-by-numbers things that nominally look Trek-shaped, which is why he says science fiction isn't about the future. Slay the Spire II. Slay the Spire II is available. Spires are indeed being slain, mostly while unspoiled. If you want the fully unspoiled experience, skip this section and come back to it later. You should play Slay the Spire II if and only if you played a lot of Slay the Spire I and you like the idea of slaying more spires. Now some minimally spoilerific thoughts. The new characters seem harder than the old ones, especially in that if they don't come together they fall apart and suddenly die. But that could be lack of experience, and especially not knowing how to pursue some of their strategies. Regent seems like it requires you to have a good mix of stars and star uses, which gives you more ways to fail and for cards to not be useful. There's a bunch of themes, especially in Necrobinder, that seem like they're supposed to be things you can make happen, but that don't seem supported enough to make happen, and all my wins have heavily relied on multiples of one particular common. Defect has a much harder time gaining focus, as defragment is rare and consume and biased cognition are gone, so it's not entirely clear how he's supposed to work when I stop hitting defragment all the time anyway. How lucky. Whereas the new Ironclad and Silent seem quite strong. The new boss rewards move away from energy and towards other changes, including a lot of upgrades and card removes, in ways that will take a while to properly adjust for. If there's one criticism of the game, it's that this is more Slay the Spire and stays too close to the original, and feels more like a very good mod than an entirely new game. Another criticism is that the enemies seem less distinct and are doing less to punish strategies that are otherwise overpowered, whereas there are a lot of these numbers escalate steadily over time fights. In particular, Time Eater in the Heart in the first game punish doing a lot of card spam, whereas in the sequel card spam goes almost entirely unpunished, and there's no version of Awakened One either. Yes, there are exceptions and a few little things, but they mostly don't matter. Do powerful things quickly and you win, if not you lose. The game also needs a proper boss gauntlet and final test in general, without which, for now, most runs that make it to Act 3 have basically already won and have every reason to dodge elite fights. Boo! There was one defect deck I had that was built around top, and that would have been in deep trouble against one of the 3 Act 3 bosses, but that's one time out of a lot of runs, and I dodged that fight. Similarly, one cool tension in Act 1 of the original is worrying about Gremlin Knob, so you didn't want to go too heavily into skills or a slow build too early. Now that's gone, you do still have multiple I suggest you kill me quickly elites, but there's less interesting trade-offs there. And the new version of active skill punishing that seems to be one hallway fight, where you're limited to 1 skill per turn. It's not the same. One welcome change is that the ascension levels so far escalate much faster. The impacts are very much not messing around, whereas before a lot of them were minor, although minor things add up. But that meant playing a lot of games if you didn't want to cheat and edit the file. Gamers gonna game. Top quick, easy to teach games with flexible player counts for lunchtime breaks. From Paul Smith. Kariba, Faraway, The Resistance, aka Avalon, 8-Minute Empire, Legends, Panda Spin, and Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game. He also recommends games for beginners, Dwarf Romantic, Flamecraft, Azul, Sushi Go, Harmonies, and Ticket to Ride, Europe, or USA, but he prefers Europe. Ticket to Ride, USA or Europe, can be a lot of fun, and it's easy to explain the rules, but it also has severe flaws, especially that you spend half the game drawing from the deck and half the rest going through motions. You make few important decisions. Winning is mostly about laying the longest tracks possible, and players who don't know this slowly lose without understanding what happened. Ben Thompson interviews Matthew Ball about the state of video gaming. It has been rough out there. Platforms are taking huge cuts with their subscription services. Roblox, the abomination, is eating market share. There is more supply chasing similar demand. But the big problem is that games are losing the war for attention. AI isn't even in this picture yet. The central problem is that gaming now has to compete, especially among 18 to 45-year-old men, but also everywhere else with crypto, sports betting, and prediction markets, TikTok and other short-form video, OnlyFans, and so on, and it asks players to lock in and focus when no one knows how to focus on anything. They don't mention streaming services like Netflix, but I would add them as well. I'd also add most mobile gaming and the whole mobile F2P genre as not even gaming, but as competition for mindshare. I'm even consider Substack. As Matthew put it, you used to largely be competing with nothing, with boredom, or with watching television based on what was on. Now you face a murderer's row that is optimized to hijack your brain, whereas gaming almost entirely stayed the same. Graphics and sound improved, some other features marginally improved, load times improved, which is nice, but we are long past where that matters much for the core experience. The improvements are marginal. Great old games, simple things where players have the fun and you work with restrictions, are, I think, typically both more wholesome and more enjoyable. You can argue the golden age of new game quality is now, and maybe you're right if you use strong selection and you highly value not being frustrated, but it's not fundamentally different. The golden age of the available gaming experience is obviously right now, as you can buy a Switch and have access to an army of retro games across decades, plus the option for newer stuff, all on the cheap. There's infinite great games in the archive, but the competition is stiff. The Gathering is magical. If you can access the cards, pre-modern is the best Magic format. Check this out after many years of playing with the same cards. You can do anything you want to do and face a huge variety of opponents.
Sam Black. I don't know that everything's classified exactly the way I'd classify it, but that split of aggro/control/combo is unreal. Pre-modern's so good.
Image. The image is a smartphone screenshot of the MTG Top 8 website on the pre-modern page, showing a metagame breakdown with percentages for aggro, control, and combo decks alongside lists of archetypes. On the right, it also displays a scrollable list of recent events and a most played cards section with card images and usage percentages.
The standard might be great right now. This is excellent deck variety.
Frank Carsten. Over 1,900 standard deck lists were submitted across Magic Spotlight, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the regional championships in Turin, Mexico City, and Taipei City. After cleaning archetype names, here's the combined metagame and win rate matrix.
Image. The image is a horizontal bar chart titled Standard Meta, RCs Mexico/Europe/Taipei and Spotlight, showing the percentage share of various deck archetypes. The largest named archetypes are Izzet Prowess, 13.9%, Izzet Lessons, 12.1%, and Mono Green Landfall, 11.1%, with an other category at 18.0%.
But that won't last.
Andy, Aftermath Analyst. The hardest sell for Standard being one of the best formats it's ever been is that new cards come out way too often. It is near impossible to keep up with. Getting cards is costly and difficult. They will never fix this though because more sets equals more dollars.
Sam Black. I'm comfortable spending money on cards. I own almost every card I'd want to play in old school, pre-modern, and CEDH. The rate of change is prohibitive to me entering standard. I wouldn't play a ton of events, so I'd basically need to buy an entire new deck every event. Pass.
MTG Old Frame. For me, the worst thing about non-static formats is that you have to keep spending a lot of time regularly just to stay updated. When playing a format like pre-modern, you can likely use the same list a year later, and it's about as competitive.
Sam Black. I'm comfortable spending money on cards. I own almost every card I'd want to play in old school, pre-modern, and CEDH. The rate of change is prohibitive to me entering standard. I wouldn't play a ton of events, so I'd basically need to buy an entire new deck every event. Pass. Oh, another huge issue is that basically no stores actually have all the cards, which means you have to order online, but needing to lock in a deck a week in advance to have time to get the cards really compounds the issue of how little time you get with it. When I played Standard, I was drafting in paper all the time and I just had everything, but at least near me, I don't think it's possible to find that many paper drafts anymore given the cost of packs and convenience of Arena.
Having to stress about card access was so bad for Standard that as a pro I also literally maintained full play sets of everything to avoid the stress. But that doesn't work if you're not doing this full-time or close to it. It's fair to say that many decks don't change much for months, but effectively, Standard has very high fixed costs to staying current, in both time and money. I can afford the money if it was worthwhile, but I can't afford the time. I think you need to be playing on the order of an hour a day to even consider it, whereas all the prize money in real-life tournaments is in CEDH anyway. The only money in traditional formats are in Pro Tours and on Arena.
Sam Black. The small scene of CEDH Sharks is interesting. Talked to a couple kids who seemed very good at the game and asked if they played other tournaments. The answer? There's no money in other formats, right? I can pay $60 to win $2,000 in locals playing CEDH.
Zach Hill. That is really fascinating. Had no idea the EV was so high. But also, why do tea tables just default to hanging the sharks?
Sam Black. The decks aren't built to do it. The other decks are too lethal, and the games are too compact. Everyone's always in panic/stay-alive mode, and the game is about navigating how to do that. Also interesting that there can only be this much money while Wizards isn't involved. Demand at this level is predicated on being able to play proxies.
I grew up with TMNT, and I remember it fondly, but it has no place in Magic. The Gathering and the artwork I see is in stylistic abomination when taken in context. I am fine with Dungeons & Dragons, Lord of the Rings, and Final Fantasy, and sure, once every few years you can have a little makes-no-sense-here fun if it makes you piles of money, but no, stop, this is crazy. Remembering Kai Buddy. Sports go sports. Trump is looking to pass new regulations on athlete compensation and free right of transfer in college sports. He does not like that the student athletes can now charge market price for their services and take their talents to the highest bidder every year. I largely agree with him on this. I have no problem with the athletes getting paid, including paid very well, but the transfer portal is completely out of control. Sports greatly benefits from roster stability, where players stay with their team for longer periods and teams have unique long-term identities. It also isn't great for anyone's education to have all these students transferring every year. I know you didn't come here to play school, but let's try and give them a chance. Unfortunately, due to how the law works right now, we have swung from one extreme of getting paid peanuts and being unable to move to full mercenary mode. Trying for a middle path would be illegal. This also will enshrine the richer schools, since they can each year buy the top players. My preference would be that pass a law that allows us to adopt some of the rules of professional sports. Long-term contracts should be possible. The transfer portal should take a page from free agency, and come with compensation if the original school makes a strong financial offer. A luxury tax or salary cap is hard because you can be paid indirectly without the school's consent, but with Congress on board, there would be ways as they literally control tax policy. Remember that tax incidence is not who writes the literal check, and we could earmark any taxes collected back to our public universities. It's tricky, and obviously not our biggest problem. I still think college football is way better now in the playoff era than it was before, despite the related issues, except that my favorite team is Wisconsin, and we handled it badly, so we've sucked. Government working. Scott Alexander explains the origins of California's proposal for the 2026 Billionaire Tax Act, which is that SEIU, a union of healthcare workers, is using ballot propositions designed to be destructive as systematized extortion. This is their latest target, and they are hoping to extort Gavin Newsom. If it somehow passes, the money is earmarked for health care, so even if it devastates California, they don't care. SEIU delenda est, sure, but that's secondary here. The obvious solution is actually California ballot propositions delenda est. Donald Trump declares his intention, without congressional authorization, to take $10 billion from the Treasury and give it to an organization he created of which he is the pre-preachal head, and where can use the funds for whatever he wants, including funding his favorite charity. He calls this new organization the Board of Peace, to remind us to read 1984. I am confused in what way this could be legal, or how it could fail to be a high crime and misdemeanor. It sure seems like the head of the FCC is threatening that if you don't cover the Iran war sufficiently positively, they won't renew your broadcast license, because you aren't operating in the public interest.
Brendan Carr, FCC chairman, attempting to control broadcaster speech through threats. Broadcasters that are running hoaxes and news distortions, also known as the fake news, have a chance now to correct course before their license renewals come up. The law is clear. Broadcasters must operate in the public interest, and they will lose their licenses if they do not. And frankly, changing course is in their own business interests, since trust in legacy media has now fallen to an all-time low of just 9%, and our ratings disasters. The American people have subsidized broadcasters to the tune of billions of dollars by providing free access to the nation's airwaves. It is very important to bring trust back into media, which has earned itself the label of fake news. When a political candidate is able to win a landslide election victory after in the face of hoaxes and distortions, there is something very wrong. It means the public has lost faith and confidence in the media, and we can't allow that to happen. Time for change.
Brian Schatz. This is a clear directive to provide positive war coverage, or else licenses may not be renewed. This is worse than the comedian stuff, and by a lot. The stakes here are much higher. He's not talking about late-night shows, he's talking about how a war is covered.
Quirky Llama. I'd find all of this much more compelling if it were accompanied by a reassessment of two previous Democratic wartime leaders, Wilson, FDR, who were far more egregious in their violations of 1A in pursuit of war aims.
Yes, previous presidents blatantly violated the First Amendment in time of war. No, that does not in any way make such actions okay. Very much the opposite. Also, you don't get to say in time of war if you don't declare war. The ultimate conclusion of things like the UK's Child Safety Act is inevitable, and now UK PM Keir Starmer is exploring age-restricting, require a face scan for use, all VPNs.
Politics UK. Keir Starmer has launched a consultation on age-restricting VPNs to stop kids bypassing the Online Safety Act. He's also announced new powers to ban under-16s from social media and block infinite scrolling features at short notice, pending the consultation outcome. Closing a loophole in the Online Safety Act so AI chatbots are covered by illegal content duties. A consultation on how tech companies can prevent children from sending or receiving nude images. A consultation on whether to increase the age of digital consent from 13. New requirements to preserve children's social media data following a child's death.
Closing a loophole is code for applying this same treatment to AI chatbots as well. Senator Schumer sold us out, trading efficient and revenue-maximizing allocation of NYC airport slots via auction for JetBlue's promise to use some of those slots for artificially cheaper flights to Buffalo, Syracuse, and Rochester. You can make a Tyler Cowen-style argument that subsidizing flights to smaller cities in the region creates high consumer surplus, since people have artificially low willingness to pay for flights, and also the cheap flights keep people from leaving such places, which causes cascading damage, so they have an oversized impact as a subsidy, but you can't flat-out pay, more than we already do, directly, or it looks terrible. I get it, but oh boy is it a stretch, and if you buy that, then it's hard to be a libertarian overall. I will mostly not be monitoring the situation surrounding Operation Epic Fury, other than to note that if you're about to call your operation that, maybe reconsider whether your plan is going to work out the way you think it is. I will note that I agree with Dean Ball that whatever else the Trump administration is doing here, if your special military operation is going to endanger world trade, then being the reasonably priced insurer of last resort for that trade is an excellent move, as is offering to provide escort ships. Yes, you should be willing to lose money on this. Remember that $100,000 H-1B visa fee? I expected a decline in demand, but not like this.
Connor O'Brien. 85 people have paid the $100,000 H-1B fee so far, totaling $8.5 million in revenue. But fee revenue from H-1B applications abroad is down $28 million. So the fee, justified by a paper, claiming the revenue-maximizing fee was greater than $100,000, appears to have lost the government $20 million. Laffer curve confirmed real.
This won't prevent the H-1B cap from being hit, which would be worse, so the net effect is we lost a bunch of money. Yet the comments remained full of, let's make the fee even higher. Not great, Britain. A kid is inadvertently sharing a meme named terrorist content. We will arrest you and potentially give you a criminal record and make sure you can't go to college. That's what the UK government is running ads to warn kids about now. Instead of, not trying to ruin kids' lives over a meme.
Arctotherium. Annualized UK speech prosecutions are running at about 17x those of the Soviet Union under Brezhnev. Of course, the USSR had 4x the population, so more like 68x the prosecutions per person year.
Image. The image is a chart titled, Modern UK Speech Prosecutions Greatly Exceed the USSR under Brezhnev, comparing annualized arrests for speech-related offenses. It shows a much taller bar for the UK, 2,341 in 1 year, versus a smaller bar for the USSR, approximately 141 per year, with flags under each bar.
I see quite a lot of content about the UK cracking down in increasingly insane ways on speech and access to the internet, including attacking VPNs and jailing people for private messages or when someone is offended, while it fails to crack down on physical crimes including theft and rape. You know what offends me a lot? Rape, theft, and letting such crimes go unpunished. You know what else offends me quite a lot? Censorship. Sometimes the stories turn out to be misrepresented or largely false, or chosen to be cases where there is a good reason behind state action, as you expect via toxoplasma of rage, and what happens when the entire population is being actively censored and is scared of prison if they speak out, but also often the stories clearly check out. It is long past the point where I could possibly consider living there. It's just right out. Variously effective altruism. I agree that such beliefs can be terrifying if taken seriously or literally, but also have you seen what most people believe? Also highly terrifying if taken seriously or literally.
Rune. Admittedly, the EAs who believe in an objective, non-human secular morality can be quite terrifying.
Oliver Habrika, +1, also quite terrifying to me.
The negative utilitarians worry me even more, especially if they count as both. But yeah, it can get worse. Want an example of something way worse? Here you go. What would be the least effective altruism? perhaps going around telling people who have pledged to give money to charity to betray that promise. So the prize goes to Peter Thiel, who makes such points as, some people who signed the pledge aren't even billionaires.
Teddy Schleifer, Peter Thiel tells me that he has had a dozen private conversations recently with signers of the Giving Pledge, encouraging them to unsign it.
It is one thing to tell people not to sign a giving pledge. It is another to actively tell people to unsign it, while yourself having billions and giving away little. Does Peter Thiel have a point that many charities end up captured by left-wing ideologues and doing unproductive or anti-productive things? Yes, that is an excellent thing to worry about. That doesn't mean you can't spend money to help other people. The road to hell. What percentage of people believe that if hell does not exist, it would be necessary to create it? And how many people do they want to send there?
David Althouse. 11 to 14% in the US, UK, and Pakistan were consistent and concerning responders for Create Hell, rising to 19-25% in China, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Results for Want System, 8-11% and 19-24%, and Would Create System, 7-11% and 16-23%, showed roughly similar patterns. Looking beyond the conjunctive measure, when asked what proportion of humanity deserves unbearable pain forever, more than half of participants answered 1% or higher. A quarter answered 7% or higher.
The correct amount of punishment is not 0. The correct amount of eternal unbearable pain, however, is definitely 0. You should be very worried about anyone or any culture that thinks otherwise. Jones Act Watch. Are they going to hit the Solve Everything Now button? As in suspend the Jones Act? We shall see. Suspending the Jones Act would help, but it is a lot less effective than ending it entirely. You can't make investments and long-term adjustments when you know the rules are going to return after the Iran conflict is over. The hope is that even this smaller improvement will be highly motivating. In the longer term, Willie Smith proclaim how great the Jones Act is, and wow, the comments are unkind.
First squawk. U.S. supplies of gasoline are being shipped out of the country to travel thousands of miles via the Bahamas before finally ending up in California, a state battling shrinking fuel-making capacity and high pump prices.
Scott Lynchacombe, and you will never guess why. Okay, fine, you'll probably guess.
Yep, I did guess Jones Act, among other stupid rules that also make things worse. What would happen if we got rid of the American-made ship requirement for ocean-going vessels, but kept the other 3? We only make roughly 1 to 2 such ships a year, so giving the shipyards a compensating subsidy would be relatively cheap.
Colin Grabo. There are currently 93 ocean-going ships in the Jones Act fleet. I asked ChatGPT and Claude how many U.S.-flagged ships would spend at least 80% of their time in domestic commerce if the JA's U.S.-built requirement were removed. Answers.
ChatGPT, 160 to 230.
Claude, 256 to 429.
The existing 93 ships are mostly very old and lack capacity, so this is a bigger jump than it might appear. You can get a bigger jump if you also upgrade the ports. Patrick McKenzie, Periodically. How to read a document around a lawsuit on the FDIC pause letters regarding crypto, where the court is, shall we say, pissed. I see why. It's quite the document indeed. Patrick warns of potential future pissed-off judges regarding Lutnick and Tether.
Patrick McKenzie. Look, I'm just some guy, and I've never been either CEO of a financial services giant or cabinet official, but it is my general impression that when you carry water for a client by alleging the existence of a due diligence process, that process has to exist. Many people have sort of a casual relationship with the truth in many circumstances. I once caught a fish. It was these big. If one has that relationship to the truth with regards to things one's financial institution is doing, there is a word for that, not a happy word. Are you being fair to the CEO of a financial services firm in characterizing his remarks as specifically alleging a robust controls process? You tell me. Bloomberg.
Bloomberg. They have the money they say they have.
Lutnick said in an interview with Bloomberg Television from the World Economic Forum in Davos. I've seen a whole lot, and the firm has seen whole a lot, and they have the money. And so there has always been a lot of talk, do they have it or not? And I'm here with you guys, and I'm telling you we've seen it, and they have it.
There's another way to phrase that, which is, as I pointed out immediately on hearing it, much more common, which is to disclaim floridly that you are not vouching for anything but exactly the thing you are saying.
Indeed, my understanding is that if it turned out Tether does not have the money they say they have, you would not especially want to be Lutnick. If you want to speed up ACH transfers and spend less effort on verification and assuring bank officers you know what you are doing, line things up so that both sides of each transaction are at the same bank as often as possible. Banks have to deal with you differently if you are sufficiently wealthy or otherwise are in the habit of doing things that are not typically done by users of the bank, often in ways that require escalation to people qualified to handle such scenarios, and many banks are not set up well to handle high weirdness, even if it's totally legit. If you are a customer of weird financial services, be aware that you will often need to trigger escalations before your needs can be handled. If your needs are too often too weird, you likely therefore end up in one of a few institutions that opt into being able to handle this reasonably well. You can not only shop around for, but also directly negotiate on bank interest on deposits and the price of other financial services, and saying, "we don't negotiate," is a negotiating tactic, which is annoying for anyone who actually won't negotiate. Why having a tin can out for donations might not be worth the money you raise and other ways and reasons to present one's writing in most professional possible light. Hacking the status ladder via more professional descriptive labels has its advantages. Not that I intend to try and claim them. Patrick McKenzie recommends evaluating your needs periodically and then buying term life insurance and private own occupation disability insurance, including overbuying in younger years to anticipate the future. He even says the threshold for "I don't need this" is approximately having 25x your present income in liquid assets. As in, he doesn't say this, but it's clearly the logic. If you have you money, and could retire today if you wanted to. I think this is a rare Patrick McKenzie error, and the wrong way to think about risk. Buying insurance without a large information advantage is almost always horrible in expected dollar terms. There are times when you know you are unusually likely to need insurance, or the insurance is intentionally offered at a loss as a kind of promotion, and thus the insurance is mispriced and you should buy it. But if that is not you, then it is instead other people who are turning a profit, plus the insurance company is turning a profit. Plus, there are substantial transaction costs on all sides. You're going to get a remarkably small percentage on average of your money back in net present value terms, even if you assume economic normal all around, and that if the events happen, you're actually paid despite the two laws of insurance, which are you pay and we don't. Patrick is effectively saying you should still be buying the sucker's side of the trade because the marginal utility of money is highly variable. And yes, there is certainly some of this, but you then have to ask to what extent things would genuinely really be not okay such that the marginal dollar shoots way up in value versus what it is now. And also keep in mind that marginal dollars when young are actually rather valuable for things like being in position to buy a house or marry or have a child or take advantage of opportunities. The cost of lacking liquidity or having to borrow can be very high, including in reputation and time. Whereas, yes, you might die and leave everyone in a worse situation than now, but that doesn't mean everyone involved will never have income and can't adjust, and there won't be other resources available to fall back upon. And you certainly don't need 25 years of income to guard against such scenarios. Are you trying to maintain your current lifestyle and spending level indefinitely if you were completely unable to work again? Do you actually need to do that? And if you do, how often when this happens is the insurance actually going to pay out? The exception would be if you are essentially unable to save money and would spend marginal dollars on consumption that you don't especially value, or find it taxed away by your family or community in a way you don't endorse. That changes everything. A thread about escalations of the customer service process, including when that happens on social media, which is multiple times over, sorted to only show itself when the case is extreme and absurd. The system seems to most of the time work via threat of escalation rather than actual escalation, which means that it is likely, my take not his, that the job of dangerous professional is to signal in a way their systems will be able to notice that you are willing and able to do the escalation. Patrick McKenzie pays his Japanese taxes, goes exactly how you would expect. Thread about bank statement fraud and related scams, and he reports many have privately confirmed its accuracy. Bank statements can easily be faked. They're pieces of paper with known formatting, but are still treated strong evidence for essentially 3 reasons. 1. If you're caught, you will probably get prosecuted for real. 2. If someone checks with the bank, they have very good records, you will be caught. 3. If someone wants to check with the bank, they can unless you explicitly say no, and if you're explicitly saying no, you're effectively caught. The threat is thus stronger than its execution, and its execution is also strong. Thread where Patrick attempts to handle 4th grade social studies questions. You can't recruit good recruiters because we don't pay their opportunity cost. Do not be a bank CEO and ask Patrick McKenzie to retract a well-regarded piece via Twitter without first consulting your lawyers and PR department. Patrick McKenzie, somehow for the first time, has a wire not arrive in its usual time frame internationally. It all works out in the end. That's how reliable wires are. Discussion of how to best go about pursuing a denied FOIA request. Signatures are not a way to prove someone approved something. Signatures are for solemnization.
As I've mentioned previously, solemnization is a socio-legal tripwire to say there are many situations in society and in business where you're just talking, and up until this exact moment we have been just talking, and after this point we were not just talking. Do you get it? People who are unsophisticated about this think that the signature is somehow preventing someone from retroactively changing the terms of the contract. People who are unsophisticated say things like, "Oh, use digital signatures to prove that that has not happened." Sounds great. That is simply not the risk that the process is concerned with. In some cases, solemnization declines to being vestigial. For example, signing credit card receipts. No one cares. Your bank does not expect a waiter to do forensic handwriting analysis on your signature versus the one on the reverse of your card, rejecting thieves. If someone steals your card and perfectly reproduces your signature, and you say, "My card was stolen, I did not pay for that dinner," your bank will say, "Yeah, sounds really likely and we have no exposure here. Okay, restaurant eats it. Can we get you off phone quickly, please?" If same thing happens in a real estate situation, "Yeah, that was not really me in the room signing that." Their lawyer is going to have some pointed questions, and eventually your lawyer is going to have some carefully worded professional advice. But a thing that a real estate closing is really concerned with is that all parties, who may be operating across a range of sophistications, understand that there was a long negotiation that got us to this point, and that negotiation hereby concludes successfully. The number of conversations which begin, "Well, I didn't really sell it to you," is greater than 0, but it is less than it would be in a counterfactual world where there wasn't the pomp and circumstance of a real estate closing. You can, by the way, get much faster than one would naively expect if one is willing to simply put forged documents in front of one's lawyers and judges in an increasingly unrealistic fashion for many years. The immune system might not catch you for a very long time.
It is also my understanding that one can go down a path of outright forging documents and the signatures on them for quite a while before being caught, as the system essentially assumes you will not do that. As with many such things, cheaters never stop cheating is being relied upon, and a reason this path is a bad idea. but also once you go down this path, you usually do need to keep going and things escalate. The lighter side. Quickly, there's no time.
It's Coast Kenny. My last 2 passengers got in the car with someplace to be. I always explicitly ask, "Do you want me to drive like a psycho?" And they said yes. God, I love this job sometimes.
She has witnesses.
Sarah. Oh my God. I cannot believe I forgot this. We had a server with an identical twin. Apparently, they would switch places when one didn't want to come into work. They told no one, but came in together to quit. The reveal was incredible. Gasps everywhere. Best day of my life.
Also, she tells us this.
Madison. Somewhere in a small southern town, a girl was proposed to tonight at the local Olive Garden.
Sarah. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory in Oklahoma City for 5 years. No one prepared me for the amount of proposals I'd witness.
A great closer.
Michelle. When I was doing improv comedy in NYC, I had a buddy who was pursuing stand-up. We would workshop his jokes, and I would go with him to open mics to record his sets for him. One night, he told me he had a real banger to end with. He said he was going to do an impression of his dad, but needed a volunteer from the audience. A guy got up there, however, trepidatiously. My friend said, "All right, you're me, and I'm my dad, okay?" The guy said, "Okay." Then my friend just left the room, left the venue, and did not come back. A few minutes went by of uncomfortable silence and scattered laughs. Eventually, the volunteer goes, "Well, I guess he's not coming back." And the whole audience erupted in laughter and applause. The host came out to ask for one more round of applause for my friend before moving to the next comic. I slipped out to go and find him. He was somewhere down the street, rolling on the floor. Laughing emoji. This was in 2008, but remains my favorite stand-up joke ever.
This is the perfect opportunity to open new, better pizza places.
The Hill. Hegseth says he'll order random pizzas to throw off monitoring app.
Senator Mike Lee, R. Utah, tweets, "Cartel hitmen wear masks." Leftists aren't complaining and somehow decided to quickly delete it afterwards.
Senator Mike Lee, "Cartel hitmen wear masks. Leftists aren't complaining."
Senator Chuck Schumer, yes. Cartel hitmen wear masks. That's why ICE shouldn't.
And it's gone.
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.